should be consideration and it should be in the course or furtherance of business, but section 7(1)(c) gives us certain activities in schedule 1 which are not for consideration and which may or may not be in the course or furtherance of business. Still those activities will amount to supply. So which are these activities? So we have four such activities. Okay. First one is your disposal of business assets Yes. So even if you are giving it partly or wholly, it will be services only. Okay. Then we have treatment of process. Okay. So when you are applied to another person's goods, meaning that if some other person has some goods and you are giving certain services or you are processing something or you are improving it, then that will amount to services. Then we have transfer of business assets. So if you have any goods forming part of business assets which are transferred, disposed of, or by or under condition directions of person carrying on business so as no longer to form part of those assets. Okay. So you are permanently transferring those assets or you are disposing of the assets. In that case, that will be a supply of goods. But if you have the goods held or used for business are put to private use or are made available to any person for use for any purpose other than business by or under directions of a person carrying on a business, then in that case it will be services. So see, if you are permanently disposing of, then it is a case of goods. But if you are putting it to a private use or you are making it available to person for use other than for business to any other person, then that will amount to your services. Then, if you have goods forming part of assets of any business carried on by a person who ceases to be a taxable person, shall be deemed to be supplied by him in the course or furtherance of his business immediately before he ceases to be a taxable person. Okay. So if you have any goods which are part of any assets of any business and now this person is not doing the business, he is not a taxable person, then these goods shall be deemed to be supplied by him in course or furtherance of business immediately before he stopped being a taxable person, immediately before he stopped doing his business, and in this case this will amount to your transfer of goods and it will be a supply of goods. Now we have certain exceptions in this. If the business is transferred as a going concern, then that will not amount to supply of goods. And if the business is carried on by a personal representative who is deemed to be a taxable person, in that case also it will not be supply of goods. Then next we have renting of immobile property. So in case if there is any construction of complex building, civil structure, etc., then in that case we have to check if there is any temporary transfer or temporarily we are permitting the use or enjoyment of any intellectual property rights, then that will be considered as supply of service. Now for construction, we have to see that the entire consideration should be received after the issuance of completion certificate or after its first occupation, whichever is earlier. Okay. In that case, you will consider these as your service and supply of services and GST will be leviable. Then if you have any development, design, programming, customization, adaptation, upgradation, enhancement or implementation of any IT software services, then that will amount to your supply of services. Or in case if you are agreeing to obligation to refrain from an act or to tolerate an act or situation or to do an act. Okay. So you are obligated that you will not be doing that act or you will be tolerating that act or you will do that act in that case also, this will be considered as supply of services. Then we have certain composite supplies which are also considered as supply of services. So that includes your works contract. So in works contract, it might be that you have to give certain services and materials will be given, or you have to use your own materials. In both these cases, it will be considered as supply. And in later chapters, we will see that how some works contracts are exempted, and for certain you have some RCM of supplies also. Then, if you have any supply of goods being food or any other article for human consumption or any drink, so if there are any composite supplies, they will be considered as your services. Now we have certain things which are considered as non-supplies under the GST section. Okay, this is section 72A read with schedule 3. So the first one is activities by an employee to the employer in the course or in relation to his employment. So whatever services an employee is providing to the employer in employee-employer relationship, whether that employer is using it in the course or furtherance of business or in relation to his employment, then all those services by this employee to the employer will be exempt from GST. Okay, that will not be treated as supply of goods nor a supply of services. I'm sorry, it does not exempt. It is not supply nor supply of services. Okay, that is coming out of the purview of supply. Then, if you have any services by any court or tribunal established under law for the time being in force. So, if any courts or tribunals they are giving any services or any services of law, then those will again be not a part of your goods or a part of your services. Then we have the third one wherein any functions performed by the members of parliament, members of state legislature, members of panchayats, members of municipalities and members of other local authorities. All these are also not supply of goods or services. Then if you have any duties performed by any person who holds any post in pursuance of the provisions of the Constitution in that capacity. So, if you are performing any duties in your constitutional capacity, in that case also that is not a supply of goods or supply of services. Then, if you have any duties performed by any person as a chairperson or a member or a director in a body established by the central government or state government or local authority and who is not deemed as an employee before the commencement of these clause. So before this clause started, if that person is not deemed as an employee and if that person is performing any duties as a chairperson, as a member or as a director, in any central government, state government or local authority, then that will again not be treated as your supply of goods or supply of services. Then next we have services of funeral, burial, crematorium or mortuary including transportation of the deceased. So if you have any transportation of a deceased person or if you are carrying out any of these services of the last rites of that person like funeral, burial, crematorium or mortuary, in those cases it is neither a supply of goods nor a supply of services. Okay, it is outside the purview of supply. Then next we have sale of land and subject to paragraph 5b of schedule T, sale of building. Okay, so in case if you have sale of land or if you have sale of building, then we have to check the conditions for that certificate completion or possession. In case if they are not met and if the building and everything is ready to be possessed, it is not under construction, and you are selling that, then in that case, this GST would be leviable, it would be supply. But if it is under construction, then in that case, that sale of land or building will be not considered as supply. Then we have certain actionable claims other than specified actionable claims. So all those actionable claims which are not specified will not be a supply of goods or a supply of services. Then if you have any activity of apportionment of co-insurance premium by the lead insurer to co-insurers for jointly supplied insurance services, provided the lead insurer pays full GST on the total premium received from the insured. So see this, what is co-insurance premium? So suppose you have taken insurance from company A. Now company A has many such customers, and company A also wants to insure itself. Okay. So what company A will do? Company A will go to company B, which is again an insurance company, and company A will seek insurance from company B. This is a case of co-insurance. So now here company B is your lead insurer, and company A will only be apportioning the premiums which are paid. Okay. So what this lead insurer will do, this company B will pay full GST on the total premium received. Whatever premium company A has received from the customers, company A will be passing it to the lead insurer company B. Now company B will pay full GST on this total premium amount received, and now what this company will do is it will distribute some amount to company A. So whatever this apportionment that company B is doing for company A, that will not come under your supply. Okay, company B has already paid the full GST. So now company B is simply apportioning it to company A. It will also have other companies like it as company A. So in that case, this will not be a supply of goods or a supply of GST. Okay, it is simply redistribution, not a fresh supply of goods or services. Then if you have any services by insurer to reinsurer with ceding commission deducted from reinsurance premium, provided the reinsurer pays GST on the gross premium inclusive of such commission. This is also a similar case. So here also, if the insurer is paying any ceding commission to the reinsurer, okay, which is deducted from your reinsurance premium. So here also the one thing that you need to check is that the reinsurer has paid GST on the gross premium inclusive of such commission. Then in that case, any services that the insurer is providing will not be a supply of goods or a supply of services. So now how you will determine whether there is a supply or not. Okay. So first thing that you need to do is the activity a supply including supply of goods such as sale, transfer, barter, exchange, license, rental, lease or disposal. So the definition of supply includes all these things: any sale, any transfer, any barter exchange or any exchange, any license, any rental or any lease or any disposal. Okay. If you are getting the answer yes, you have to come here to the next question which says is it for consideration. So next you will be checking is whether consideration is there or not. If consideration is there, then we'll come to the next question, whether it is in course or furtherance of business. Again, if you have yes answer, you will come to these. you will check whether that activity is specified in Schedule 3, which includes those activities which are neither goods nor services. So if answer for this is yes, then that activity is not a supply, and if you have the answer no, then the activity is a supply. Now, in case for the very first question, sale, transfer, barter, exchange, if the answer is no, then you will then you will directly treat it as not a supply. Okay. Then for the second question, is it for consideration? Here, if your answer is no, then you have to check whether these activities are specified under Schedule 1. So if you remember, we had already seen that there are certain activities which are specifically taken in your Schedule 1, and even if they are without any consideration, we are considering them as supply. Okay. Then if you have answer for these question as yes, then again you will check whether it is in the course or furtherance of business, and in case if you have the answer yes, you will again come to this question whether it is an activity specified in Schedule 3 of Section 7(2)(b), and again you will check the same things. If the answer is yes, it's not a supply. If it is no, it is a supply. And for these questions, whether it is in course or furtherance of business, see again you need to check whether it is an import of service. Okay, so in case of import of service, if it is for consideration, then we are not checking whether it is for furtherance of business or not. That will still amount to supply. Okay, so next we shall do some questions. So yes, let's see these questions. Explain the meaning of supply as per provisions of Section 7(1)(a) of 7(1) of CGST Act 2017. So as per Section 7(1) of CGST Act 2017, the term supply includes all forms of supply of goods or services or both, such as sale, transfer, barter, exchange, license, rental, lease, or disposal made or agreed to be made for a consideration by a person in the course or furtherance of business. Okay, so this is an inclusive definition. It includes sale, transfer. So if you have any sale or if you have any transfer, barter is like you are exchanging some goods for some other goods or services. Then you have any exchange, or you have any license or rental or lease agreements, or you are disposing of any assets, or you are agreeing to be made an asset by consideration for a person, which can be in the course of furtherance of business. Then all of those activities will be supply. Then we have certain amendments which says that the activities or transactions by a person other than an individual to its members or constituents or vice versa, for cash, for deferred payment or other valuable consideration. So these will include any services that any body corporate or any person other than an individual is giving to its own members. Okay, so if you have any cooperative society, or if you have any such things wherein you are providing the activities or transactions to your own members for cash, for deferred payment, or for any other valuable consideration, then in that case that will be included under supply. Okay. Then next you have import of services for a consideration whether or not in course or furtherance of business. So if you have any import of services, then if it is for consideration, so you will not check the other condition that whether it is in or not in course or furtherance of business. Then any activities which are specifically given in your schedule 1 which are made or agreed to be made without a consideration, they will be your supply of goods or services. Then if you have any activities to be treated as supply of goods or services referred in section 2. So section 2 also specifically gives you a list of activities which are treated either as goods or supplies or as supply of services. Okay. Then we have this next question which says list any 5 activities or transactions specified under schedule 3. Remember your schedule 3 is those activities or transactions which are neither goods nor supplies. And okay, so this question is asking us that we should list any 5 transactions or activities which are neither goods nor supply of service. So any services that an employee through the employer in the course of her or his relation of employment that will not be considered as supply of services or supply of goods. Then any services by any court or tribunal established under any law, any functions performed by the members of parliament, members of state legislature, members of panchayats, members of municipalities and members of other local authorities. Then any duties performed by a person as a chairperson, as a member, as a director in any body established by the central government or state government or local authority, and this person is not deemed as an employee before the commencement of this clause, that will also not be considered as supply of goods or service. Then if you have any services of funeral, burial, crematorium or mortuary, including any transportation of the deceased, that is also not a supply of goods or services. Okay, then you have 10, 11 points. Any 5 or 6 points you can remember for your exams. Okay, you have to check the marks and accordingly you have to write. And for such questions, make sure that you write 2-3 extra points if you are remembering, because by chance if anyone goes wrong, then in that case you will be saved from losing any marks. Okay, come to this question. What this question says, Saib sales an air conditioner dealer in Janakpuri, Delhi needs 4 air conditioners for his newly constructed house in Safdarjung enclave. Therefore, he transfers 4 ACs on which ITC has already been availed by it. So do you remember there was one case wherein we are disposing the assets or transferring the assets permanently on which ITC has been claimed. Okay. So now they are asking us that examine whether the said activity amounts to supply under section 7 of the CGST Act 2017, and further they are saying that a Janakpuri resident Akash approached Sahib Sales. He sold air conditioner to Sahib Sales for 5,000. Akash had bought the said air conditioner 6 months before for his residence. So there was some ACs which were used for residential purpose. Now these are transferred to Sahib Sales for 5,000. So will these sale of AC by Akash to Sahib Sales amount to supply under section 7 of the CGST Act? So what our section 7 says that for any activity to qualify as supply, we need to check 3 things. Okay, there should be a supply of goods or services, then it should be made for consideration and it should be made in the course or furtherance of business. Then further, Schedule 1 states that certain activities will be treated as supply even if made without consideration. Okay, and in that we have one activity which is permanent transfer or disposal of business assets wherein ITC has been claimed on such asset. Okay, in that case, that activity will be treated as supply even if made without any consideration. So, considering these provisions, the permanent transfer of ACs by Sahib sales from its stock for personal use at its residence, even though there is no consideration, there is no course or furtherance of business, still this will amount to supply as per your section 7 schedule 1. Okay, but the sale of AC by Akash to Saib sales will not qualify as supply. Why? Because Akash is an individual person. He had not claimed ITC on this AC. Okay. So even and this is for consideration and it is in course or furtherance of business. Okay. So this will not qualify as supply under section 7 as although it is made for a consideration but it's not in the course or furtherance of business. Okay. Um, See this question. Mr. Priyam, Director of Sun Moon Company Private Limited, provided service to the company for remuneration of 1,25,000. Briefly answer whether GST is applicable in the below mentioned independent cases and if yes, who is liable? So Mr. Priyam is an independent director of Sun Moon Company Private Limited and not an employee. Please mark this as important. Here we are specifically given that he is an independent director and not an employee. So in that case, it will be supply and GST will be leviable and this will come under your RCM case. So the Sun Moon Company Private Limited would be liable to pay GST. Then second one we have Mr. Priyam is an executive director, that is an employee. Remember here he is an employee of this company. Now what they are saying, out of the total remuneration amounting to 1,25,000 rupees, 60,000 has been declared of Sun Moon Company Private Limited and subjected to TDS under Section 192 of the Income Tax Act. So see, whatever amount belongs to your salaries, that will not be a supply of goods or services and no GST will be leviable on that. But on the balance amount of 65,000, since it is not paid in the relationship of employee employer and TDS under section 192, that is salaries, has not been deducted on the same. Okay, TDS is deducted under section 194J as professional services. In this case, these 65,000 will be considered as supply. Again, RCM supply and the company Sun Moon Private Limited is liable to pay GST on the same. See, we can go through the answer. So, as per para 1 of Schedule 3 of the CGST Act, supplies services by an employee to the employer in the course or in relation to his employment are non-supply. That is, they are neither supply of goods nor supply of service, but services provided by the independent directors who are not employees of the said company to such company in lieu of remuneration as consideration for the said services are clearly outside the scope of Schedule 3 of CGST Act and are therefore taxable. Okay, further, paid to the directors is taxable in hands of the company on reverse charge basis. So, GST is applicable in this case and Sun Moon Company Limited is liable to pay the GST. And for the second case, the part of director's remuneration is declared as salaries in the books of a company and subjected to TDS under Section 192 of the Income Tax Act is not taxable, being consideration for services by an employee to the employer in the course or in relation to his employment in terms of Schedule 3. Now further, the part of employee director's remuneration which is declared separately other than salaries in the company's accounts and under section 194 of the Income Tax Act as fees for professional or technical services are treated as consideration for providing services which are outside the scope of Schedule 3. So whenever you have any TDS deducted under section 194J, that will not be a part of your Schedule 3 and it will be taxable. The next thing that you will be checking is whether you have to pay GST under forward charge or under reverse charge. So in this particular question, the recipient of the said services is a company, okay, and that company is liable to discharge the applicable GST on it on reverse charge basis. Now, in lieu of the above provisions, 60,000 declared as Sun Moon Company Private Limited and subjected to TDS under Section 192 of the Income Tax Act is not taxable, being consideration for services by an employee to the employer in the course of or in relation to his employment in terms of Schedule 3. Further, 65,000 declared separately other than salaries in the Sun Moon Company Private Limited's accounts and subjected to TDS under Section 194J of the IT Act as professional services is treated as consideration for providing the services which is outside the scope of Schedule 3 and is therefore taxable. The recipient of the said services, that is the Sun Moon Company Private Limited, is liable to discharge the applicable GST charge basis.